sa shi bu shi ju je men don cham ra lin shin ning de gyam ban de sang je shin do mi de pi wa ro ge nam da shin da je ba ra sho yi da ma gu ro ra na men ra la gu ni yan da ya mi 다디 나로를 칙디 내가 친구 칙디 겨워 예배 람라 이tembe 세 칙디 내가 친구 시부지레샤 제장가 랑주 가야겠다 내가 더 상마 제차브다 아주 미지 나로를 그래 제비네 미샴발을 직대비이나 잠불링기 니주 가와 직대비이나 아니 랑주 따지기 직된디 나로를야 랑주 직 대와 아니 지가서래 아니 컨데지 이면은 당 저기 딜 때니 디지털도 가지고 용야 매버디 세브 차용도 아니 겨워게 별람데 이템베스다 겨워도 톡 예서치 소수기우드 심젠 레하베 아니 콜지도 아리아스도 파파스도 좀베 코란 저기 대화 공부셔 당당 코난 저기 아니 지가서래 동행길이야 갑대 작는데 안조도 베들 로가요 잠베 아니 자와 게베게 아니 람텔라 땅아 이 뜬기 인스도 마텔 주고 인스 어디 내가 내가 좀 물어도
Then sort of looking back into the third line of the second verse, where it reads, who place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors. Then here, there's a very sort of strong message, a very important point that is being made here, because in the sort of worldly, in our ordinary people's worldly lives, the regular situation throughout the world, then when we talk of of course we all strive for and talk about forms of happiness, but this is not it can never become a kind of a complete and everlasting form of happiness in the way in our ordinary sort of worldly situation and worldly lives. And here what is being talked about is a sort of a kind of the place the trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, the path that leads to a kind of much more extraordinary form of happiness. So beyond the ordinary. And so here it references the sort of Arya beings, those superior ones, the noble ones, and their way of thinking. And their way of challenging the mental afflictions, and which then lead to them, a much more complete, the complete form of happiness. And so to that path, it says here, place in trust in the translation, but the way I want to interpret that word is I will enter into that path that pleases the conquerors and leads to this complete form of happiness.
다 디인도 잠베 아니 제름부치기에 제장가 땅에 드린 키란줄이야 아니 시에버지부 최디 엔 키란줄 가야 땅 키란줄 기부 직대나는 기부 용해디 시기면서 가리 시기인수도 야와 제비게 람라 야 이템바이나 엔예 되기 드린 셰디 키란줄 깨와다 데바도 저기 엔디 야보치 년쇼 시제다 안줄 낸된 체제 아니 랍제 중도가
So here we have a very sort of clear injunction to us. Je Rinpoche is saying to us, for those who wish to make this life of leisure meaningful and place their trust in the path that pleases the conquerors, and so that is not the sort of this is not for. I have not spoken or explained I'm not speaking or explaining these things for the purposes of ordinary forms of worldly happiness, but I'm explaining it in terms of for the fortunate ones who here can listen with an open heart to engage in this path which leads to Sweet
Bode
happiness.
Ninjung Gordon de Shekyon Bekablaya, Namda Ninjung Me par Sisoyi, Dendro Tinin Shibe Tamela, Sila Kamba Yijan Legenum, Guni Chinjir Toma Ninjung Zel Sheche. Da Ninjung Sine di Samloji Mebina, Arangaranzu Kowa di Naloya, Ani 갈수록 동해 탐지 시와세디 아주 토비하고라 매봐 코웨기네 코웨 나로리아 도스 대비이나 코웨 샤만제 묘모미 샤만제 직벌 묘모미 샤만제도 네버 트지도 안줄 기부지 용해 매베인데 아니 묘모미 샤만네마 타르토바 징아주 최고도 엔 대용말라 당보 아니가 코안에 타르고도 세게 삼로디 중바당 신의 대외 두부 아니 시와세디 어디디 아니 삼로디 신의 레토베 지르샤스 다디 준제기 남샤르도가.
So here, then, Je Rinpoche moves on to a more sort of specific and detailed explanation of renunciation, one of the three root meanings or root aspects of the path, where he says, without pure renunciation, there is no means to pacify the yearning for the joys and fruits of samsaric ocean. And as craving for existence chains us thoroughly, at first search for a true renunciation. So here, this is talking about the sort of wish to, if the fact that if we have no thought of renunciation, no thought of wishing to be free from the state of samsara, then there's no chance for us, and no chance for us to be able to remove all of our suffering. So there's no opportunity, there will be no opportunity for us to, even if we wish to have all of our suffering removed, there'll be no opportunity for us to remove all our suffering if we do not have the thought of renunciation. And this is because if in our samsaric condition, we are under the sway of, or we are under the power of something else. We're under the power of our mental afflictions. And therefore, under the power of our mental afflictions, there will be no opportunity to be happy, to have true happiness, and to be liberated from this state of suffering. So, in order to, so we have to understand the sort of causal relationship between being liberated from the state of samsara and getting out from under the power of the mental afflictions and being liberated from samsara, and then the result of that, which will be the peace where all suffering is removed. So understanding that causal relationship between being wishing to achieve peace and therefore needing to be liberated from samsara to achieve that peace. Well.
다 디인도 잠베 어떤 맛이 주로 된 거지. 군이 칭지르스 다 군이 칭지르스야 돼 양대 섬도도 당고야 되지. 어란주 레 칭바세도 잠베 징비 되는 징바세도 잠베 배 시부지기 배 차생기 바도스 제제 주 주디에서 그렇지. 된제지 갑라야 어란주 대화 남양 도구 말했어요, 손로지. 다 차고 여바다. 아니 당화 여바 디시도 아니 등진 여바 디시도 고 칭왕세도 좀 담배 계절에 디 갑라 남양 아니 시바세도 좀 동해 탐지 매바세야 돼. 용야 매비. 장즈 요마를 써야 되다. 딩아란주 삼로 당서기다. 시치슈지 코안에 타고도 써야 돼. 삼로 나라 디인지미지 레고도스.
And so when we talk about this thought about wishing to be liberated from samsara, we have to have a very, this has to be, we have to be very clear about what that means and how we're going to do it. So in the third line of the English translation, it says, and as craving for existence chains us thoroughly. Uh, uh, so here, the craving for existence uh, chains us thoroughly. So the yearning for the joys and fruits of samsaric ocean and this craving for existence chains us thoroughly. So here, this is a sense of being bound or chained. And what are we bound by? Particularly, we're bound by attachment. And if we have strong attachment, then we can't get the true sort of everlasting peace that we're after. And this is also true, of course, of anger and hatred. So with being bound by in the grip of our own anger, hatred, and attachment, then there will be no way for us to find that sense, that state of peace, a state of peace which is forever free from all forms of suffering. Um, that state of peace will not come if we were still enmeshed in this attachment, anger, and hatred. So this is a very important point to take when we uh, think about or talk about the idea of liberation from samsara.
제가 삼리 아니 냠렘 받은 저기 차신 매베 돈에 아니 롱제 얘기 답시 치기 차신 매베 돈에 아니 얘기 그래서 그래 최대 치기 요새 디자진 뭐 차야 돼 차신 디기 아니 수수기 심규리야 아니 마데바지다 뭐지부 수기여바디 문신 토구여 따라도 당아란 줄이야 아니 지기 당왕디 레원도 잠베 세밀al 미기부디 세월에데 아니 차과여바디기 좀 뭐지부 수바디 데즈 라트 카스로지 차과디기 토네 셈바 뭐지부 용구도 슬라도 신의 냠랭 삼로디 나로라 아니 칭화세야디 또 셈바 부수도 수도 세야지 대양 그또 새 토르침베이나 주미 이지 남도 그 조다치 디 상황을 누구도 세 데레지 삼로 코베이나 아니 그 우이니즈도 튜비토네 얘기 내가디 누구미 누세 되게 아마지 용도 세 어디야 삼로 당당 디 내가 첨부르샤 제가 아주 인중기 삼로 마지 용어라야 아니 제가 되조기 주민 이지게 남도 그 조다당당 아니 착박이 아니 수수교기 대화 매바 컨디스고도 디 양량도 삼로당야디 양 아주 원도 선럽디 리샤야디 내가 친구를 통고도
And so here, talking about in terms of a sort of practice, and there are some sort of for practitioners who are able to rid themselves of a sort of attachment, particularly a strong attachment, then they may be able to enjoy all of the things of the world and practice in a very sort of clear and productive way. But for in order to really to do Dharma practice, we have to understand the way in which attachment really the way in which attachment really brings us unhappiness, to see the connection between our own attachment and to the unhappiness that brings us. For instance, with anger, it's much clearer how we can see that really the feeling of anger and the results and feeling of anger are very much more obvious to see the negative aspects of it and how that brings us unhappiness in our lives. But with attachment, it's that relationship between our attachment and then ruining our own happiness is not so clear. It's very hard to sort of bring ourselves to understand that. But if we but in terms of our practice, we need to see how the causes of attachment are gradually bring us to feeling kind of stressed out and then for a very uptight. And also a more subtle version of this, the sort of the thing that brings on our attachment is a way in which we engage with objects in an inaccurate way, something which is called inappropriate attention, which drives us to see phenomena to engage with phenomena in an inaccurate way, which is not in accord with reality. And so actually, we need to understand these processes of this kind of inaccurate mental engagement and also then the attachment and anger that stem from those. And so before we even talk about renunciation, we should also have some understanding of how this inaccurate kind of mental engagement, what is called inappropriate attention, and also our attachment actually serve as a way to destroy our own happiness. And those understandings must come before, as like preparatory practices, before we really talk about and understand the meaning of renunciation.
다 딘데기 아주 이 청와디 혀로 땅야기 아니 탑시들이야 아니 아주 답변아 지기 변아 체디기 아니 나와라야 쇼지기 현자 용의 직당 치매기 나와라 현자 용의 숙청부지 니여베 나로네 다 저런 비체기 당다 디기 워그 특제된 나로리야 아니 체디기 아니 지기 나신 도단들이야 가주스 세딜이야 현재 차지 가주스 제샵이 있나야 아주마 손은 더바 치매 지에메 되니지 란주 가주스 바 롱제샵이 있나 가주 롱제베는 뒤주 숙처럼 줘야지마도 아니 다 딕송세 자원이 요 말에 아니 텔레 지기 더바 침 기께지고 말에 텔레 때네 심규 투도에지 망으로 용도 전에 아니 세디기 아니 나완들이야 현차디 또 지기 용으로 당야 당 아니 매버스야 돼 백개심 그래시지 랍자 당부디 딜리기도 와
And so here, as Jay Rimshi will sort of mention to us in a later verse, when we talk about this form of bondage or being chained, chained us thoroughly to this sort of realm of cyclic existence, this kind of being bound, how to get free from this chains or this bondage, and the method that can help us to be released from that, from being chained to that kind of way of life. Then in a verse later on, Jay Rimshi will talk about how the clinging and attachment to the appearances of this life, and then also the clinging and appearance, clinging to the appearance and clinging and attachment to the appearances of future lives. But particularly when we talk about the clinging to the sort of appearances and the supposed good things of this world, of this life, and our attachment and clinging to those. And what is said to us is that we can see even in this life, however much we are able to engage in something and enjoy something, it's not, these things are not giving us real or any form of real or lasting happiness, because the more we engage, the more we become attached to something. It's not the case that we will say, oh, that's enough, that's great, I'm fully satisfied. The attachment causes us to desire these the appearances, the things of this life more and more, and it doesn't in any way bring us a sense of peace or satisfaction. And so he advises us on methods in which to be able to, in order to work towards our own happiness, our own long-term happiness, he advises us on ways which we can reduce our attachment and clinging to the appearances of this life, and eventually to eliminate them.
세부 송요 말인데 란주 디규 딱벌 준비 등진지도 우스 딱벌 진문도 준비 고 딱벌니 딱벌세 된다디 아니 먼지봐 마차봐 유어매봐 느리지 삼로지가 줄도스 대양양 배 가르서고래 아주 창미기 다 세미나로래 깨깨베 타마디 시주인 바당 아니 지기 가리네 규질 때문에 준비야 규된 견질 때니마 주지 규된 견질 때니마 매바 차야 되다 그 춘이레 시제 아주 체톱에토는 랍토고요래 이나양 삼류 소르지기 나로 가리요레스 준비 세미나로야 딱 벌점에 등진 차시 소르지 딱 지금 참모 탄냐는 말이데 참여 소르지리야 단도 때지당 아주 대요래 단도 때지 지당 얘기 라가도 제토우리 삼삼기 로기 펜바디 나로려야 지금 아주마 손에 로샤사기 등진기 셈 참모지 간절로 여두점에 딘지기 등진 참모들이야 이 신의 나란 쪽에다 펜배쳐도 아주 치워미다 봐도 공부이나 아니 되기 미다바 공부 되기 셈 나로려야 간절 가르쳐 두고를 세도 선배 아니 강 교교 강이 직당 뷰 다부터네 아니 가라는 주기 차당모 좀 매배 쇠하게 쳐도 아니 가라는 주기 나를 담제 등에는 담제 여번나 신세제 아니 덴저르기 예배 다 세텔랑에게 된 여버징이 지금 세들이야 편도자 친구 주용 것도 선배 아니 세디기 낭신도 약쳐도 메다바고 공부를 하와매 시제다디 가담 벨라마 공부 용조기다 배 드리 당하선로 드리.
And so here in this context, when we sort of talk about this sort of need to eliminate our, in this case, our attachment to the appearances of this life, and sorry, my camera's attachment to the appearances of this life, and then in this regard, in this life, we have to sort of look at the way in which we're drawn into that way of engaging with the things of this life, with our attachment, and it's important for us in order to be able to uproot this, to look at the root of what that attachment to the things of this life is. And when we look carefully, we find that there is a clinging to the to a permanent self, to some ourselves as being permanent, as a root that underlies all of that. It's not clearly stated exactly here in the text, but this is a form of clinging to the form of self, which is kind of unchanging, almost indestructible, unchanging, and constantly abiding as a single sort of permanent person. And this it creates a problem with us in order to let go of our attachment, our strong attachment and also our anger to the appearances of this life, our reaction to the appearances of this life. So, of course, in our minds, we do have that sense of, like, we say it very often, I'm born in this world, so I will die, that sense of, some sense of impermanence. Or that, with causes and conditions take their place, then although we're alive at the moment, at some point we will have to pass away. We have that sort of very generalized understanding. But in the corner of our minds, we still have this sense of a sort of permanent, abiding, unchanging person, a permanent person that we still sort of cling to, and that still causes us to engage with the things of this world with attachment and anger. And so this is not the subtlest form of clinging, but it's a subtler form of clinging that we all have whenever we do our work and work for the welfare or work for the benefit or productiveness of something. that's we all still have that kind of person deep within inside of us. And so what is advised to us is that the best method, the best kind of meditation, or the best way of thinking, which helps us to also uproot that subtle sense of clinging to a permanent self, is the contemplation on impermanence and death. And so this will help us to release that sense of a permanent self, and slowly help us to start unwinding our mental afflictions and the three poisons. And if we're able to have that context, then whatever we do, whatever we work for, then that will all be work for the welfare and positivity of everything we do. And this death and impermanence is taught by the Kadam masters as a very important personal instruction.
Okay. Uh, now the death impermanence. Normally, such a spoiler. People don't like it. I don't like it. But relatively, it's sometimes helpful. For example, these days on the Instagram reel, they show some kind of a advertisement. 10 best cities to visit before your death. So that sounds interesting. People don't complain on that. So like, wow, I should do it. So it's similar. If you have something better things to do before the death, then we always know we can be spoiled by our own laziness. So not getting controlled by our laziness, to overcome that. So the best motivation is, if something happens to me, most regretful thing is if I cannot do this. So then you feel like, I will wake up very early, I will go to the sleep very lately. So that becomes quite a normal for us. Similarly here, as a Dharma practitioner, whose main mission here is to, in this life, I am going to give a big fight towards my own grasping, which that practitioner really changed his way of thinking. My main enemy is not out there. This is ordinary. But main enemy where I am labeling from is through mindset, which really, even that person is totally changed. He become one of the best kind person. But you will, even he become Buddha, even he become fully enlightened, but still you will hold him as your enemy. That's more problem from your own way of thinking. So if you cannot let this kind of clinging go, there is no peace of mind. That's for sure. So for this, the great Shantideva, in his way of Bodhisattva's life in this text, he will remind us who is your real enemy. Who is your real enemy? He will always try to. He will bring the outside your enemy, the person, the physical person in front of you. Say, hey, this is not your enemy. it really bring an anger to you, that's true. But the funniest thing is, you are holding your image, your way of understanding, that really disturb your mind. Not that person directly have a kind of a cause. It's a condition. It's not the real cause there. So now, if this sort of mindset for a practitioner, unless I don't, in this life before the death, if I cannot reduce or eliminate this sort of grasping, I will be not happy. So for this meditator, this practitioner, then one of the to fight against his laziness, to overcome this laziness, is the impermanence. So that I think very important. Sometimes I try to meditate on a death impermanence, then I feel like I don't care if I die tomorrow. But then I sit down and then I try to think, oh, I say this because there's no something very important for me to do. That's ignorance. Not a kind of a thing to be appreciated. So that is quite important. For that impermanence practice becomes so important to the person who is practicing the renunciation, especially in order to reduce the grasping towards this life's appearance. Like the example I give, me and my lottery. Lottery. No, lottery.
ועכשיו, נורית שאומר שהעיסוק או הדיון במוות והארעיות זה אולי מה שלפעמים אנחנו קוראים באנגלית ספוילר, משהו שמקלקל עבורנו דברים מסוימים. מאחר שלפעמים האנשים לא כך אוהבים את הדיון הזה במוות.
Also, as a practitioner, how will that sound? The rest of the life, they practice, and then doctor tells you you don't have any time, and you got like shocked, and then you feel like, what will happen now? So this, before going into this kind of a situation, it will be much wiser that preparation becomes first, and then no regret. You didn't prepare anything, the regret comes, then it is foolish. Better not to think about anything about. So, like this, my teacher would always say, if we have a good understanding of the death impermanence, so it is more like in India, the trains are like not on time. So what is the takeaway from this? So in India, you will not stay very relaxed. So you cannot go out from coffee, and you don't know when it's coming and when it's going. So you have to keep all your backpacks packed and be ready to jump in. So that is the takeaway. So I heard this from a teacher several times. It is very helpful. But when I went to Canada to learn English, actually, at that time, one person reached to me saying that in this area, she found that one Tibetan Lama is visiting. So she sends a message to my friend saying that she is in a very difficult situation. She has this brain trauma, the trauma, tumor, brain tumor, and quite a last stage. She is in a hospice. It was the first time I ever heard of hospice in my life. So I thought, like, of course, I really need to meet. If someone in this situation, they still feel like there's a little hope that I can offer, sure. So I went and visit, and then it was quite sad to see the situation of her, and she has a scarf in her hand, and she gave this to me, and I gave her back, and then it is because as a Tibetan tradition, not a Tibet, I don't blame Tibetan tradition. It's more like my way of doing at that time. So I don't listen to the situation. I feel like she may be so scared of death and everything. So I started giving a piece of advice. She kindly listened. And then her response was like, I wanted to clear out that I'm not afraid of death. For almost 30 years, I was preparing for it. So I can overcome that, no problem. The problem is, that was amazing. She said, the problem is because I'm in the hospital and I'm on a kind of a medication, and when this tumor grows and they need to give a strong drug. So through this drug, then she cannot meditate, she cannot bring the awareness and preparation. So then it comes like this. It will be very sad, because almost for 30 years I prepare for it, and then through this medication I cannot bring the practice. That will be a very sad moment for me. So what kind of piece of advice do I have on that? That was so powerful. I was so kind of surprised that I can find these kind of people on this planet and then in Canada. And then I folded my hand towards her and said, you have given such a great kind of teaching to me, indirectly. But then I said, well, because your strength of mind is very strong, how much the drug they will use to reduce the pain? Just think, the strength of the mind is so strong. It's like it will, normally when we have this mindset that I need to go, wake up tomorrow morning so early at 5 o'clock, I couldn't miss my flight. And then you forgot to set an alarm and you think that you have already set an alarm. And surprisingly, you will wake up 4:30. So why this happens? It's the power of the mindset. You couldn't prepare at the time, but you are all well prepared. So this is how the practice will not get wasted. So that was my response. So that lady, now I think she passed away. She was in her 50s that time. She was such a great example. Time to time, whenever I travel around, I give this example to people, because how she was well prepared through the meditating on that impermanence. So how she become very strong. This is something we need. And also in Spiti, where I was born, in that village, there's one elderly man, normally very difficult person. But then at the time of death, he was full of pain. But then he gives one advice to his family. He said, "Up to now I'm shouting to you all so that you don't get spoiled. So now I kind of ready to leave this world, and in the future, when you will be leaving this world like me, I want you to die like me." So then he give piece of all the advice, like a lama giving a teaching to the students. So the family, his family was like quite surprised that such a powerful piece of advice normally he never gives, and then he really kind of inspired his family. And then at the time of the death, he was so peaceful. So those are the things why in the Lama Tsongkhapa he is saying to reduce, to eliminate the grasping towards this life so much. Outcome will be you will be more peaceful, and then you will get this kind of realization. That's what we need. Otherwise, if you have so much, it's really stupid. One time I ordered this, don't tell this to anyone. I bought this the air fryer. Well, that was a very cool thing, because the doctor tell me eat healthy and then not fried food, but that one looks like quite healthy. So I ordered online. A few days later, before it came, I was so sick. I was feeling like, okay, now this is it. So then the most funniest thing is like, I would think, I ordered this online and it will reach last moment. It is so funny that I have to die before this, using this. So stupid, so stupid. So stupid. So, yeah, so as a practitioner, it's such important. So, not clinging to this life's appearance, still can use this, enjoy that. That's cool. But many people, when we say we shouldn't be enjoying samsara, so that means like, then what do you mean? Shouldn't enjoy life? what do you mean? So it is not saying don't enjoy your life. It's more like don't get stuck into the mud hole. It's like more like a quicksand. So that's what the piece of the advice is. Yeah. That's what. Yeah. 다 니바디 다 쳇디기 낭신디 쳇디기 나웨 제수 아니 가서 그래 라와메 봐 줘야디 아니 케비슈라 당원은 치매기 낭신데 양 도그리스 치매 낭신데 만도나 야 어제 내가 망보지 가르치고 왔어도 잠배 아니 치매 대화 토비아 점시 된다 녀체 개와 치마야 보죠나 섬내 도스 샤야치 용그레스 다 개와 치마들이 양 도스 제제 저리의 제고를 해대 이나양 제 치마 대양 아란 저기 레당 요몽게 상황도 수준 저지 대베이나 아니 그래서 우리 뉴마 제바 코베기 그래서 우리 동해의 용고지 통원도 잠배 아니 렌제기 남샤데 양도 삼대베이나 레준제기 남샤스도 잠배다 단다 네 개인기 송그리 니마지 TV 따데베 갑리야 아니 뉴스 때 뭐 통원도 잠배 디나로를 미시견차 단다 까녜망보 저 통원도 잠배 비게 닝제 단 뉴스 두자 시버지도 점불링기 내당데 야부 추니민도 삼로 당원도 치도네도 지게 점불링이야 까녜도 삼야지마도 디 남지마도 마랑기 개와 치말래 나랑 다랑 찍어지냐 연고야지 갸는 갸탐버리 시시 디 삼로지 코토베이나 신에 디디 개와지당 알 레나도 뺏사송세지 베너 디스커버리 채널로 스템베이나 디나로래야 지기 다시기 샤와선로지는 부구 깨마타도 심진 시행기 세르야당 벼르야당 ngamda khurang gol dus de go ye ji thong de zambe ta ko temo ta we son ro ji na ko ning je sin samlo sha thu re de ine ding ye ge mo hom ba gi ke wa chi man ro dan darang re se je ta je bi na je zang ga len je mi ru ko we dong ye nam yang yang sam na chi me nang chen do su ne ke wa chi ma le yang aning ye gi ji gi gar so re 아 다 danger son ro ji nye ba 잠시게 가도 되고 차마서 네 인도 잠배 다 코와 타단에 파지 타르토바지 중나 섬제 어떤 그 섬로디 깨토바지 중보이나 아니 신의 단 인중친이 상와 깨기다 라왔다 신이레스
And so
디 참샤제 내가 좀 인공 칼라
So after this, we'll take a break and have our lunch. And so, first of all, the discussion here takes place in terms of the sort of appearances, attachment and clinging to the appearances of this life, or the preoccupations with the appearances of this life. And even if we're able to sort of get this situation under control, so that we're not under the power of our attachment attachment and clinging to the appearances of this life, and we're able to cut that off. But that still leaves us with a future perspective. There's still the preoccupations of with the appearances, the attachment, and clinging to the appearances and the things of future lives. And so and then of course we will, with those kind of thinking in that kind of context, we will work and strive, use our energy to work for these future happinesses, the good appearances and conditions, etc., for of our future, the happiness of our future lives. And of course, some preparation is required. That's not saying that we shouldn't in some way make some preparations for those situations, but also in this sort of more deeper context that is being expressed here, particularly where we look in the verse 4, where it talks about the first lines 3 and 4, as it says, by contemplating repeatedly. So I'll read the whole verse. By cultivating in mind that this human life is so hard to find, it has no time to spare, preoccupations with this life will cease. But then, with that context, we then need to contemplating repeatedly the truth of karma and samsaric suffering. Preoccupations with the next life will come to cease. So this verse sort of explains to us how if we're still under the sway of these preoccupations, attachment, and clinging to the appearances and things of future lives, then we'll still be bound under the power of karma and mental afflictions, and therefore will need to continuously experience the suffering of continual rebirths in samsara, bound by this karma and mental affliction. And so if we're to be able to counteract that, if we're able to contemplate cause and effect, the karmic law of cause and effect, and then this will be able to sort of counteract our clinging to the appearances and their attachment to our attachment to them in for future lives as well. One of my teachers gave me a very clear example of this when he said that when he was watching the news, the TV on the news one day, and on the news we were seeing many sort of different situations with people, other creatures. For instance, when we watch the Discovery Channel, we'll see other creatures who are living all kinds of lives, and then also we see many sort of disasters, those kind of situations on the news, and we may think, oh, how terrible this situation is, and some form of compassion may arise in us and think how terrible the state of the world is. But the way we think about it, it's really like this sort of outsider sort of looking in. And what we need to understand is, what my teacher was saying is, we need to understand that that is actually our future. What we're looking at, if we don't do something about our situation, that will 100% be our future, and that kind of life is one that we will have to experience if we're not able to also understand the law of karmic cause and effect and counter our attachment to the appearances of future lives. So he says that, when you look at like a Discovery Channel and you see all kinds of situations where almost immediately as a certain creature is born or creatures are born, another creature will come and kill them and eat them, or they'll drive them away, or they'll frighten them, scare them terribly. So it's like a sort of, we see it like a sort of movie, and we have sort of compassion for those things. But we need this very sort of strong, decisive thinking that understands that if I don't do something, that will be my future. And so that we don't have a complete sense of comfort and understand the importance of the need to free ourselves from the entire samsaric process. And then this is the advice to contemplate karmic law of cause and effect.